Hey guys, welcome to Chess on the Brain with National Master David Bennett. So I have a game today. I haven't done one of these for a while, submitted by a user from Clement, and he sent this really interesting game, and he had this question about finding a middle game plan. And that's one of my most favorite things to do. One of my favorite things to do is to find the middle game plan and to just get into that. So let's see. Is the comment showing up here? See right here. So it says I stumbled on your YouTube channel. He's about 1600 on lead chess, and he's really come up to a point where I struggle to find out what to do in my middle game. Don't know any openings, possibly just the first 3 to 4 moves of the Roy Lopez and Sicilian. So just kind of talk about different openings, and just wants to know what to improve on. So let's get into that. Yeah, let's take a look at the game. Really focus on the middle game planning and what he can improve on. All right. So we had, well, it looked like it was going to be a French, and then he goes knight f3. So yeah, usually you could just go d4, just take over the center. With knight f3, if I were playing black and I wanted to play a French, I'd probably just go for it because they might get a good version of the French then. Although white can kind of do something like, kind of get a normal French after c3. And then play d4. So you get this pawn chain, and that'll be a standard French after you can do the queen b6 line and a6, or sorry, a3. Although I really don't think that I'd recommend this immediate push for white, generally speaking, because usually in a French you'll have something like d4, d5, and then white makes a decision, do I go knight c3 or knight d2? But for example, in this line, in the classical, you wait for knight f6 and then you go e5. So maybe that's a better shot for white rather than just going straight away with e5. Anyway, that could end up being better for black if they do d5 right away, but they're going for a different system. They want to play b6, which is something I've actually been playing myself recently. So kind of like Owen's defense. Starting with b6 is Owen's defense, or you might end up getting Queen's Indian, transposing to that. Queen's Indian if you play if they play d4 and c4, or if they play d4 and e4, then it's just more of just a pure Owen's defense, or it could even be kind of a hedgehog setup or a hippopotamus setup with the double fianchetto, which I've actually ventured into as well. And then you just stick your knights in the center, and you don't block your bishops. The bishops are going to go here and here, and nothing's going to be blocked. So that's something that maybe his opponent has in mind. His opponent is 2035 and he's 1637. And it sounds like he hasn't had any formal training. That's pretty solid. Just I think not playing for too long to have a 1600 rating. And after understanding the middle game a little more, you said you already have strong tactics. So after understanding the middle game a little more, I think you'll really boost your rating. I mean, should be seeing an 1800 rating soon. And then just keep refining your game to get to expert level and beyond. So b6. But the key is, yeah, as you mentioned, I got to know what my weaknesses are, right? Know what to work on. So let's see, based on this game, bishop b7, knight c3, and knight to f6. Okay, so he's obviously attacking that e4 pawn. We have to do something about it. Now, what do we do about it? Well, plays e5. Looks like Stockfish agrees with him. e5 is just the most aggressive response, right? You could play a little more kind of, a little more contained with something like bishop g3. That's fine also, but then you're going to have to worry about this pinning the knight, and there's still going to be pressure on e4. So he's like, hey, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to go for e5. And let me just double check that this is actually working. Let's see. We have, yeah, it looks like everything is coming through, hopefully clearly. And we have on Wii Chess, if it's actually coming through there. I know there's been some issues with that. If we go to this to see if it's actually coming through on Wii Chess. And I think it looks like currently streaming. There we go. Cool. Alright, so let's go back to it. And e5. And e4. Yeah, it's been a little while. Got to get back into it more. And hopefully we'll get more games like this to look at. So after knight e4, he takes. Now the bishop, it could be a target on e4. As we say, loose pieces fall off, right? So let's keep an eye on that bishop. And the computer is saying, I mean, we'll take it with a grain of salt in the opening, but the computer's saying 0.7 advantage for white, so as if the value of white's position is almost like he's up a pawn. So it's still too early to say, because it really depends on how things go the next few moves out. But clearly he's got a good position. He's got a space advantage. So that space advantage will give you some initiative, right? It's gonna put some pressure on your opponent. So it's all up to your opponent. How are they going to react to that? Bishop g5. Well, I guess he's just playing for quick development, and it's kind of interesting, because I think what you're trying to do is say, all right, obviously you can block the threat, right? He's not going to hang his queen and just give you his queen. But if he goes bishop e7, now the strategy might be to trade off the dark squared bishops, which is pretty sensible, because this is your so-called bad bishop, right? The bishop on your dark squares, which is covered by these pawns, and then this bishop should see a little more activity. So, interestingly, you could think about h4. It's probably a little more unorthodox, but this kind of thing is typical if you want to start. I mean, it's actually consistent with the position, because you have that space advantage. It's kind of wedged pawn that's aiming toward the king side. So you probably know you're going to seek action on the king side. So playing something like h4 is actually, it's not just like some, caveman attack, just charge. It's actually principled. And you'll see it with some interesting games too, where Kasparov has done this a lot. And obviously nowadays AlphaZero did it a bunch. So this h4 stuff, or these wing attacks, a4, a5, h4, h5, and vice versa for black, have become kind of in vogue these days. But for good reason, because it makes a lot of sense in certain positions. And also, in some cases, later on, you might even get to here and further weaken those dark squares that you already have some control over. So keep in mind this theme of controlling certain complexes of squares, like the dark square complex, and these types of, well, it's not a full French, but these kinds of advanced positions where you have the pawn here. Of course, we want to aim at the dark squares, and you've already made a concession, though. So the hyper-modern player, the player with the black pieces, says, all right, well, I'm not going to take the center with my pawns directly, right? When I'm playing like this, my pawns are going to kind of stay back a bit, but my pieces are going to be really active, kind of cutting through your center, and I'm provoking you to push forward. So the second that happens, sure, you have better dark square control, but you have really weak white square control, or something at least that, something that white needs to keep an eye out for. This bishop is really strong on the diagonal. So, and who knows, maybe black weakens the diagonal later on with this, something like this. But probably will play a little more in the center for now, just cutting through the center. So keep that in mind. Okay, knight comes in, we trade this, bishop g5. So just consider something like h4 is very interesting. But taking is okay too. I would advise, though, just another important point. So the side with more space, they generally don't want to trade pieces as much, right? Just think of the logic of it. If you're, okay, like how they crammed people into Volkswagen, like into the Beetles, like in the 60s. So if you have like a bunch of people crammed inside a Beetle, it's going to be really uncomfortable. Or just think of it like a small room, right? If you have like this, like I'm in my kitchen right now, part of my kitchen. But if you have like a bunch of people in the kitchen, it's going to be uncomfortable, right? There's like 10 people in here, it's probably already at capacity. So you probably want to have like, okay, guys, can you like go drink something in the other room, kind of spread them out a little bit, right? Or in this case, we'll just trade them off. So yeah, it's just trading off pieces is going to alleviate that burden getting squeezed, right? And you're going to feel that squeeze if you have like this very compact center, smaller center. Now that's not to say you can't get piece activity with a small center. For example, look at the bishop. That's a prime example of that. So white really, when they're pushing, they have to be wary of that, right? They got to gain space, but at the same time contain their opponent's pieces, because like one of the main points of having a big center to begin with is to be able to tie your opponent down, essentially, to get that initiative, that space, and to use it kind of as a shield. Your own pieces can be behind it, but you can also use your center to restrict, which is a big part of mastering chess. Higher and higher levels, you get better and better, not just at setting up attacks, but at restricting your opponent, right? And by restricting your opponent, your little defense, that's going to allow you to carry out your offense untrammeled, basically, right? So bishop g5, bishop e7, takes, queen takes, knight d2. Okay, well, this is just some random, I think that's just Stockfish like does an auto analysis. So it already had that on there when I embedded the game and the PGN in this I use this, you can go learn, study on Lichess, really useful function. So I think it just already embedded that there. But so knight d2, it says dubious, question mark, exclamation mark, dubious, exclamation mark, question mark, interesting move, right? Now, a lot of players these days don't even look at that. They just think, hey, what's the computer evaluation? What's the cent upon loss or whatever, right? I didn't grow up with that, right? I still grew up reading books, and a lot of that is, not to say you guys don't read books, the younger generation, but in the books you'll see a lot of interesting types of notation, annotation, like different double exclamation mark for a brilliant move, double question mark, and so forth. So question mark, exclamation mark means it's not a bad move, but it's not the best. It's an inaccuracy, sort of. So it says bishop d3 is the best. This would carry out that trend, continue the trend of trading pieces, though. So bishop d3. I think it's just that knight d2, it's retreating, and the question is, what's your real plan? Another thing about this move is, again, we talked about the strength of this bishop on the diagonal. Sure, the bishop has to move back. It doesn't really care. It says, fine, I'll just tuck back on this nice little pocket on b7. That's his home, right? But from his home there, his main point is to put pressure here. He's pressurizing that g2 point and making white a little uncomfortable here. So Clement needs to, definitely not g3. That's the last move you want to play here, right? But again, as I said, you never know. There might be some types of like this. He might even throw this pawn at him. I do that a lot in chess 960. Try to get that opposing bishop against a queen or something, and then throw the h pawn or a pawn at them. Just a little side note. But yeah, so this is going to be a bit of an issue now, which is why you probably want that knight to stay there to block the diagonal, right? Okay, let's see where this goes. But this might be the beginning of it's ceding the initiative, essentially, right? You want to press your opponent. Now the rating issue might come up. Your opponent's at 2035. You're at 1637. So I'd be interested hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know someone, he's like a French exchange student. My parents took him in, and he was Clement. So I don't know if it's like Clement or Clement. But I'll just go with Clement because that's what I know. But yeah, so it's something that, if you see like a 2035 and you're 1600, I'm curious, were you intimidated by the rating? Because that's something that could commonly happen, and you end up getting kind of thrown off by your opponent's rating, right? Where actually a student of mine was just saying he has some function on chess.com where it hides the rating, and that can actually be useful, just to not even let you think about the rating, because what's the point is to play the best moves you can, and if that's going to hinder you from doing that, then just don't even think about the rating. Sometimes people get motivated by a higher rating, right? That might like get you excited, like, oh, I want to beat this person. If it motivates you, that's good, but you should be motivated anyway. So I have a list of things that are like self kind of notes to self, essentially, things that I review based on weaknesses I know I have. And one of them is it's very simple. It's just make the best move every move, and that's like an overarching principle, right? So that way, essentially, whether it's deeper than that, right? Because that means if I'm playing at 1200, if I'm playing at 2200 or 2600, it doesn't matter. My goal is to make the best move every move. So that should eliminate. So for example, if you were playing at 1200, or let's take 1,000 points lower, if this were a 1035, would you make this move? That's a question you should ask yourself. Would I make this move if the rating were different? And if the answer is yes, well, then you have something you need to do when it comes to the ratings. Like, either don't ignore the rating, or something. You have to change your mindset somehow, but play just as aggressively, if not more aggressively. And it's often difficult for the higher rated player to play against the low rated players for the same reason, because they get kind of lazy sometimes. They're like, oh, I got this. It's a 1600. I'm a 2000, right? They're like, it's 400 points lower, no problem. Well, it's you can use that to your advantage, but just play aggressively. So, for example, even I'm thinking maybe trading bishops might have been part of that too. It's like, it makes sense to trade off your dark-squared bishop, but don't just trade off pieces. That's what players did against Capablanca all the time, and they would lose. So, because then you'll just get outplayed in the endgame usually. So, work on your endgame skills, but I really want you to just think about how are you going to press your opponent. You should always be fighting for the initiative. It doesn't matter what their rating is. That's my point. Kind of a roundabout way of saying that. But knight d2, bishop e7. Bishop d3. Okay, so now it looks like you're hanging this pawn, and okay, what if they just take? Oh, okay, because of the g7. I see. So you're kind of saying, all right, go ahead and take. No, that makes sense. They don't want to take this. So if you take here, they're gonna. sorry, if they take here, you're going to take this one back on G7. So that's, yeah, and that's kind of your domain anyhow, since you're already aiming here. And this would, again, I was talking about this is going to come up a few times, this dark square control. So if you're able to get there, of course, that would be very good for you. It's going to actually help your knight invade, right? After rook G1, bishop retreats, and we take here, you've automatically created some holes, right? Just punch some holes in their position. So that pawn was doing an important job. Now the knight, you maybe trade off like you did in the game, trade off that bishop, so you don't even give them a chance to chop off the knight. Then the knight comes in and hops into f6, and that's going to be very powerful when it reaches there. Or if they play the c pawn out, you might even get to d6. So we'll talk about that. That's all going to come up. I'm going to get into the middle game planning, but this is more about the opening, the kind of late opening phase. But still, it's very important because you create the imbalances now, so you can come up with your opening plans at this point. All right, so after c5, bishop e4. So you did that actually right away. When but you see, remember, this is still not a threat, so you don't have to meet it right away. This computer suggesting that's interesting as an initiative-seeking move. It's going right for the initiative, going straight after this, and you'll see that a lot in French defenses too. This queen g4 idea happens all the time. There's usually like a knight on e7, and you take, and the rook, they sack it, and then the rook comes out and gets this one back or something, and then you get this pawn. But the queen g4 idea is very common. Now it's also recommending knight c4, so we're going to see that soon. I want to recommend this move soon to come into d6, whether this way or this way. But the point is, look, this is instantly a really weak square. The second they play c5, why is it weak? Because they've already moved their c pawn and their e pawn, right? If you move, it doesn't matter whether you move it once or twice. Once you move that pawn, you really weaken your d6 square. So the knight's able to just get in there and check the king and launch an attack. Whether we can if we can reach g7, okay, that's great. Sorry, by getting rid of this and then coming into f6, but it looks like that's not available to us yet. So hey, let's get into d6. And it doesn't look like the knight is really gonna be able to have any influence over that square. So yeah, you could just come in right away. But this is kind of in the same vein of doing your bishop e4, of trading off the bishops, and then just kind of being left with a better position. But again, you're trading off a lot of pieces. Keep that in mind. You can still get a better position. I'm not saying you can't, but the more pieces you trade off, just remember, the more you alleviate that squeeze that they might have on their position by being a little bit cramped, right? Because this is a wedge pawn. It's like a wedge in their position. It's like a thorn, right? And that's generally what justifies. Justifies the kingside attacks, and like such as and you could like a spearhead to the attack, f4, f5, even f6 sometimes, or just opening up the f file, just tear open the f file and the spearhead. The thing is, if they ever castle, you've seen it all the time, right? You've seen this multiple times, I'm sure. The bishop sacrifice, that comes up a lot when they play e5. So it's, and if you're looking for an attack, I just think, yeah, keeping more pieces on the board should benefit you. So I'm just thinking that it's not a bad move, bishop e4, but these bishops, I'd say they're equally good. I mean, if their bishop is better than your bishop, if it's better than your counterpart, then I'd say, yeah, go ahead and trade it. And that's why I think that the first trade, I can get behind that. This one, I'm not sure I'm backing you on that one. I'd say think about that one twice. Because bishop e4, it's trading pieces down, and the other bishop's good, but this could be used as, look, if they ever castle kingside, that's a great attacker. So you're giving up a great attacker, and remember, they're not actually threatening this since you have rook g1. So that's like it's a phantom threat. Is it a real threat or is it a phantom threat? It's always important to ask, right? So after c5, yeah, I don't think I like that move at all. Because it just gives you, I just feel like, yeah, you could do let's see what would happen if you did queen g4. Because if you can provoke g6, oh, that would be awesome. Well, now I'm a little bit more behind the bishop e4 in some cases, because you'd be able to get into both of these squares. But I think really where it's at is probably that d6 square, because it's just, I don't think they want to castle kingside. They're kind of just castling into the attack, Because again, that h4, h5 stuff, you could just castle kingside, queenside rather, and you have the bigger kingside attack. You can do a rook lift, eventually, or from here, whatever's going to happen, or you could just play kind of just central play and on the d file. You just pile up on the d file, and again, we're going to get into some of this. It's going to come up something similar soon, so I'll get more into that. But either this, Or I think this is really straightforward though, that this idea, because you're threatening a fork, right? And you say, and you're just provoking them to take. They already went back, right? Say, okay, move your bishop again. Go ahead, waste the tempo. Take this. I come here. You retreat, and then I get you. Probably just take it right away. Oh yeah, of course you have knight d6. You knight d6. Well, this will be sacking the it'd be sacking the pawn by not taking it back. But you're like, I'm happy with this because you have, again, you just have all these attacking prospects. Still have 2 minor pieces on the board. So you have 5 total attacking pieces. This is really strong. So the G pawn didn't really matter. You probably don't even care about them taking the D pawn either. It's all about that wedge pawn on E5, and that's going to enable some. Let's see a sample line. Let's see a sample line. So for example, okay, let's say for example you attack this, and I mean, could we even start playing for D, like some type of D5 later on? You could even think about that. It's already suggesting it, yeah, because it looks kind of like a computer move though, just because we're going to be hanging this pawn. It just seems like we want to develop a little bit. I mean, I think this is pretty common to do something like this first, a little more pragmatic. Just get your queen out of the way, get your king castled, and then you don't really have to worry about some lines where they take and the queen takes with check. But let's see how. I'm just curious. Let's see how that would go if you go d5 and they take it. Oh, I see. So then they want to go, like, the computer's looking at like queen h5, because of course you can't just drop this with check. But it's going to be hard to increase the pressure. I mean, you could go f6. That just looks a little sketchy. I don't know. I think that yeah. I mean, look, the king hasn't castled because he's lost his castling rights, and so we can just really throw everything we've got at this king here of Muradjan Yusupov's game. So we can, obviously we have a target right there. That's a focal point from Art of Attacking Chess. We want to try to use that focal point for checkmate, and that's really interesting. So this is just a devastating attack. It's like just forget about the pawns. We're just going all out for attack, and obviously the queen can't take because of the mate, right? You get the mate in 1. And what if the pawn takes? I just feel like this is, like I said, just very sketchy to open up your king like that. Not to be recommended. Wow, we have a shot right here. That's cool. That's cool. We have rook takes g7 because of this diagonal. See, that's where the computer can be. I'm kind of a proponent of not using the computer too heavily, but more like using it as a partner, kind of like the computer can give us good ideas and be like, oh, I hadn't considered that. I didn't think about rook takes g7. Like for many humans, that would just be like, oh, that's a brilliant move. For the computer, it's like, oh, I found that in 0.1 seconds, right? But rook takes g7. Now, obviously, the king can't take because it can, but then we have knight f5, and that's winning, right? We're gonna give up these 2, but we got the queen, so 8 for 9. Plus, the king is just so open. So he probably has to though, because now we're threatening you don't need to take the queen. We just go to f7. That looks very strong. And then yeah, he's walking into the line of fire because he goes here, and you get the mate on the g file, right? Queen blocks, and you take. That's a mate because this is covered by the knight. So for example, yeah, if he does, I mean, anything, right? Well, he doesn't have many good moves. Oh wait, what about this move? Let's say he does this. Okay, well that's just over. You can actually even just do a little queen trade, right? Sack, but you do a trade, and then you end up mating. That's kind of nicer. Elegant checkmate with that. It's like a version of the hook checkmate, where it's usually on the side of the corner. Okay. So yeah, so this is taboo. You can't take the pawn, right? So let's say, I don't know, they bring the knight out, then we take this one, and okay, if the bishop, they really want to test this out. They're like, all right, let me see what you got. I'm going to take this one. I mean, yeah, they're going to, well, yeah, we could just take, that's probably simplest. And you can just see, but like, it's not even about material here. It's the placement of the pieces, and the king is like, king is in big trouble. We can take the knight, yeah, so that just loses a piece since it opens up this one. So the bishop has to go, I mean, no, you can't even guard it. Yeah, if you go here, you can lose it this way. That's just lost then. So the best move is to take. That's pretty bad. So we're up a piece now. Okay, well now that they cover this, the queen can consider taking this one, and then this hangs. Okay, this can't end well. This cannot end well for them. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be fancy. We could just trade down. Now we trade. Now we're definitely trading because we're up 2 pieces. So that's game. And then we can, probably just break through here, or actually we can or try to take here and double up on here, increase our pressure on that pawn. Yeah, that's going to be over pretty soon. So let's go back. This was all to say that you don't really need to trade the bishop yet. You still have a lot of prospects. I think that line was beginning with knight c4, right? Or there was the g4 line. We were just looking at knight c4. Yeah, you could toss this in if you want to. But I think this is just very direct, knight c4, and it's just like, hey, it's an immediate refutation, immediately refuting this move. So look, you've weakened your d6 square, and that's a big part of, we're talking about middle game plans this game, right? That's a big part of middle game plans. It's just sensing where the weaknesses are, either creating them yourself or letting your opponent do it for you. Say, oh, thank you very much for the d6 square, and now I'm just gonna hop in and attack you, and maybe fork you, or maybe attack f7, and lots of good stuff. So and I think that was the bishop takes. Yeah, they really don't want to take on. That's really not to be recommended to take on g2. But yeah, so that's just to say this is taboo in the even in the other line, in the knight c4 line as well. Let's see. So we were on c5, bishop here. So again, yeah, it says now minus 0.5. So the computer's minus 1 now. The computer is starting to really favor black, and we can see it's just, again, it's not a really bad move. I think it's just that you had better. You definitely had better to press them, and I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity to press your opponent, because if you don't, it's going to dry up, right? That opportunity is going to dry up, and you might not get it back again. So you have to seize the moment, right? Carpe move, I guess. So bishop e4, or like each move is a day in battle, right? So you gotta seize that day. Bishop e4, bishop takes, knight takes. Okay, so they did end up castling. Now we can, okay, but let's really approach your plan. So we talked about like kind of late opening planning, like that transition into the middle game. So we're about to really get into the middle game, and we'll see what you've got. Regardless of what happens, whatever's in front of us, we're going to come up with a plan based on what we have. So c3. Now it looks like they actually missed something here. They could have put some pressure on d4, and yeah, it's favoring f4 here. I like that. I mean, it's kind of like just anchoring in, so because if this one's going to get traded off, you increase your control over the dark squares, and you're opening the window for something like f5, as well as you could anchor the knight here or here, and who knows, maybe you even sack on f6 in some cases. So you just have a lot of pressure in every direction with this knight, and of course, centralized knight can always come back to defend. So I do like f4. Let's see a sample line there, like if they take on d4, and you simply take back, well, they can gain a tempo. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I might even consider, I would think about doing an endgame. I don't think the endgame would be bad for you if the queen takes. I mean, you can claim a slight advantage just based on the superior placement of the knight. But I don't like the development, that they have both their rooks ready to go after like f6, and they can open up that file, start activating their rook. But the good thing about the knight on d6 is that it covers c8. So they can't get there, and that's actually about to open. So this is really important that, after this happened, and this is where they made a big mistake. So queen h4. Now they could have actually gone after this one with queen b4, and again, based on the fact that the rooks the queen's not lifted, so the rooks can't come to the defense of the d-pawn. The d-pawn kind of just drops, it looks like. There's just nothing to do because you can't push this. Well, you're going to lose a pawn either way. I mean, if you push, say they take here, and then you take, and yeah, you're just dropping at least a pawn. And now they can actually take back, because see how we kind of have this, this was controlling this and holding this pawn there. Well, now it's not going to be a backward pawn under the attack of the queen. Once it takes, it gets away from the attack, and now the rook's ready to come in with tempo. And this is a typical situation where earlier in the game, the advance of this pawn to e5, its advancement was a good thing, right? It was an attacking prospect for you. It was like that, again, that attacking wedge. Now, as we get into the end game, it can often be a liability. And now we're at 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we're already down a pawn, and now you have to worry about guarding this one. And also, like if they go f4, for example, I've had some nice games. Well, I've been on both sides of that, but I have a good memory of a game where he had f4 and e5, and I just had all those pieces just kind of working these diagonals, and the pawns just, pawns leave weaknesses in their wake. They can never go back. That's an important thing too with the middle game planning. So if you're going to commit to that, remember that in the end game that can come back to bite you, even in the middle game sometimes. But right now it's definitely a target. And okay, yeah, sure, there's rookie one. But yeah, the rooks are coming out, and we can always have rook coming to the d file, and then d5, nice post, and it can double there, and still keep an eye on the e pawn, and maybe provoke white to play a 4, at which point that diagonal will be weakened to the king, right? So it's all connected. One thing leads to the next here. But clearly black is, I don't know, queen b4, something like that. Sure, you attack this, and then they guard it. Should we bring out the rook right away? I suppose we could throw this in, but I do like that. I do like just getting the rook out. Yeah, let's say we did this, and if the queen takes, now we probably would just take on b2, and you maintain your pawn plus. And I mean, this doesn't do anything. You just take this. Well, I don't know. You'll lose the a pawn. You don't have to. Yeah, you just go away. I mean, just go away. You can go to a3, and then you can try and like trade queens, or we can continue our idea of doubling rooks. I mean, I guess you could get away with it, but a principle is also if you're up material, like if you're up a pawn, let's say, you don't want to trade pawns, generally speaking. That's just like we talked about the principle, a good rule of thumb about not trading pieces when you have more space, and when you have more pawns, try not to trade pawns, because, for example, there's so many instances where you're down to a king and pawn endgame, and all they have to do is get their, make it so that they have the opposition, or they're able to blockade your pawn with their king, and then you can advance the pawn, but it's going to be a stalemate situation. Or even rook and pawn endgames. There's so many drawn endings with one pawn left. But if you have multiple pawns, you can work both flanks and create new threats. Just make them the prospect of pawn advancing. Then that can be something. So I just try to keep some pawns on the board. And for example, if you're up a piece, up a knight, and you trade all the pawns off, okay, well, in its most basic thing that would happen is you're just left with a knight. If you just really boil it down, you purely simplified to one knight versus no pawns. Okay, it's a draw, right? So that's why I would probably refrain from taking. I probably was just because they have rook a1, right? Rook a1, and then they can take this back. So it's then this is kind of a target. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't do that yet. But this is good for you though. Let's say queen a3. It's saying -2. It's like you're up 2 points, and those rooks are coming. Okay, let's go forward. So this was a mistake though by your opponent. They did have an opportunity to pounce at this d pawn, and they didn't. But when they don't do that, it opens up the floodgates to your attack now. But you have to seize again. You have to seize that moment. You have the chance again. So you've got your nice knight here. You have the d6 square. Clear plan right there. You got to use it, and that's going to come in conjunction with the c file control, because the c now that they've played c5, and so this kind of can completely backfire on them, right? It can go both ways. They've opened the c file. Now don't let them in the game. They actually ended up getting control of that, and that was part of the reason they won, right? That was responsible partially for your downfall, just because of this rook coming in. That was a big part of it. And but you can turn it on them and say, okay, you did c5 and took. Well, now you've given me a c file. I can get there first. You've given me the d6 square. Now you got to do this right though, right? Because what they're thinking is, I'm going to attack this laterally. Same idea. They just went the wrong. They went the wrong way, right? They should have gone this way, and then there's no blocking it, right? Well, how do you block it now? You go f4, and once again that f4 move comes up, and as I said, you get deeper and deeper closer to the end game. You have to watch out for that. And not to say you can never do it, right? But you just have to watch out. And of course, in the middle game, you got to watch out for the weaknesses. So you do it with certain, with caution. But it makes a lot of sense here. It's part of an attack once you deal with the queen, and it's also it's just blocking laterally. So the queen's ineffective. She looks, now she's lost. She goes there, but she's doing nothing, right, on h4. So this is really important. It's a really important thing, is that don't fear your opponent's pieces. If they're not real, you have to think, are they phantom threats or not? That's a really important thing to distinguish. That's the queen h4. Queen h4 is a phantom threat. Check. Okay. Hopefully it's still. I think it just disconnected for a second. Hopefully it's still working. Let's see. Yeah. It looks like we're still good. Okay. So let's go back to that. Yeah, so they just went the wrong way. And so your opponent's not a computer. They're not Stockfish or Komodo or AlphaZero. They're going to make mistakes, and you have to pounce when they do. So even though they're minus 0.9, they're like up a pawn's worth here after this, where they literally are probably going to win this pawn. There's just nothing good to do about that, right? So as we said, that's what we take here. And Queen H4, though, is more of a superficial. I call that a superficial move. It's like, oh, I look scary, right? The queen looks scary on H4, but you have to rise above that. The key is to, if you're in a match, you're like, you're playing a live tournament match. It can be intimidating, especially like I said, you're playing against like, oh, this person's higher rated than me. They have their queen near my king. It can get intimidating. All of us will get intimidated. That's the point. They want to intimidate you, right? That's what they're banking on. But you can't give them that. Right? Say, okay, let's be objective. Obviously, you're trying to attack sideways. Laterally, I'm going to block you by playing F4, and there's nothing there. But what about rook E1? It just doesn't seem as aggressive. Rook E1. Oh, that's what happened in the game. Right? That was the game move. Probably, yeah. F4 just blocks it. And you can even kick the queen out with G3, start to do that, and you're very solid here. And we'll continue with knight D6, rook C1. So again, we're just going to turn it against him, and but I really think this is the key moment in terms of planning. Say, okay, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do here? Now you ended up going back. See that, and that is where you kind of folded on your plan. If nothing else, this is the moment that I wanted to talk about. Kind of some of the things that have built up to this. I already talked about the ideas, but it's based on this moment, right? This is the moment where you just kind of backed off from what you were trying to do. Because I think you wanted to do this, right? Maybe I don't know, I'd like to hear your reason for that. I mean, maybe you kind of just lost faith in that idea. Just thought, oh, well, okay, it's not attacking anything. Who knows what the reason was. But this is the moment for sure. But the key is that it is important. It's important that you know why you made that. Because I think that we can view this as a turning point in the game. Now, sure, you could have played F4. That's fine. But still, even here, I think we can still do... 96, and that's what I wrote. See, I wrote down, this is kind of a critical moment. Here you can take the reins with knight d6. This should be a dream square for the knight. Plus it helps to control the c file, so it accomplishes multiple things at once. Then e4 can be used as a stepping stone for the rook. So actually your rook placement on here is good, and I can't blame you for not playing f4. I mean, like I said, f4 is always, like, well, beginners will hear, like, don't play f4, right? Never play. Of course you can play f4. It's often a good attacking move. It's behind, the rook is backing it up, and you can often get a break on the f file, or it just supports your e, especially if you're going to play. I mean, e5 is a risky endeavor. Look, if you're going to play e5, you're gaining space, but there's always risk to that, and that's what the hypermodern player who holds back in their center and just strikes at your center and wants you to advance, like Morpheus saying, come at me. That's what they're banking on, right? So it's a double-edged sword. But you didn't create any risk really by playing rook here. Again, the only drawback to your position is there's a little weakness on d4. That's how I break it down here. A little weakness on d4, and consequently the square in front of it is weak, right? Which is what they do, right? They're trying to occupy. Okay, but they're going to have the fourth rank. They're going to be on their fourth rank, d5, and you're going to be on your sixth rank. So your knight is going to advance 2 more ranks into the enemy territory than their knight. So your counter, it's going to be superior to their counterpart, right? So knight g3. Yeah, but I gotta say, you don't want to do that. You just don't want to do it. I think, okay, it's probably a defensive move, and it's tough because you're always, you're thinking, okay, is this the moment to defend or to attack? Really, it's a balance. It's a fine balance, right? You want to restrict them, as I said, you want to restrict their play, and you want to carry out your own plan. How do you achieve it? I think knight g6 is actually the way to achieve that balance, because look, it's actually, well, you're kind of aiming at the king side, right? Sometimes you might get something like this in, but really I think what's going on here is it's all about the c file, right? This knight enables you to control the c file. Hey, they moved out of the way. That actually, well, they can be on d5. They're going to stop rook c7 immediately, but at least you have the prospect of playing on, you have control of the c file. That's important. You're controlling the only open file. That's a big gain for you, right? That can give you an advantage on its own. Oh, and we still have the rook e4 stuff. So in the game, your rooks kind of got stuck on the e file. And they weren't doing anything really. They became ineffective. But now, okay, you have the prospect of using the e file. At the same time, you're definitely using the c file. Yeah, you're controlling it, and really what it's doing is it's tying the knight down, because he never would want to leave. Since then, you decisively enter c7 and start it, attacking the pawns, and perhaps, using that as like a stepping stone for your kingside attack. So this rook would hope to use c7, and the other rook might double or use e4 with the tempo on the queen. So again, we're going to prove that we're going to refute this plan of queen h4. I'm going to prove that this queen looks silly on h4. We're going to gain that tempo, and then we're going to swing over and create. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. It might not be like a checkmate right away, right? But it's pressure. That's a value. That's a value in chess, right? Just the notion that you're building pressure is valuable, right? And that's essentially what that is essentially that's kind of like kind of the initiative. It's a proxy for the initiative. The initiative, it's some form of pressure that you're the one pressing forward. You're putting pressure on your opponent, right? So that's clearly a value in chess, a more abstract value. You have line control. So if we break it down, like if you talk about like Jeremy Silman, if you read, I know a lot of people have read his books, kind of modern classics like How to Reassess Your Chess, or The Amateur. I haven't read The Amateur's Mind, but I think a lot of the concepts I've heard are covered in there as well. So we would break down what are the imbalances, right? So we talked about this weakness here, and the weakness here. So they pretty much just have that. That's about all they've got going for them. What would you have going for you? You'd have control of the C file. You'd have use of the half-open E file. You'd have a space advantage. You'd have a weak square that was exploited fully by a knight. Now, yeah, I mean, the knight can try to trade it off. I guess we can try that, but they would be on the defensive. That's the point. They're the one that has to be on the defensive. Now, as I said, we've traded off a lot of pieces, so maybe black can just try to liquidate. Yusupov can maybe liquidate some pieces, and maybe they can draw. Okay, well then that might be a con. If that happened, that's the worst thing you'd have to hope for against a high-rated player. That's great. You gain some points and you move on. But again, like I said, if you want to beat them earlier on, I would preserve a few pieces. I would keep. That's my advice earlier on. Just play with gusto. Play fearlessly. Forget about, it doesn't matter what the rating is. Play fearlessly. Keep those pieces on the board when it makes sense to, like when you have a space advantage. Now, if you're the space disadvantage, of course, trade them off. Okay. So I think I did a sample line here. Just sample line, like it doesn't have to go that way, but just to see how things might go. So F6, we can attack the queen, and we can take the C file. Knight comes in, and we can stop the knight with G3, get aloof for the king. They can go here, we could swing over. Like, things are looking good. The computer's saying equal, but I don't know. I think I like white here. I think white's doing very well. Black is a bit squeezed at this point, and they don't really, well, the problem is they do have F4 coming. That's probably, yeah, you're going to have to play it. You're going to have to commit to F4. Because look, if you don't play F4, then they're going to play F4, and that's actually going to be pretty strong. So you have to really sense that it's coming, this F4 move, because if you don't, yeah, I mean, let's say, I don't know, some random move like king here. Yeah, that doesn't look, I don't know, it doesn't look comfortable. F4 is just immediately coming here, and then now you have to worry about F3 check, and you have to worry like opening the F file, and they could, I don't know, it's hard for them to double. This knight is so strong, but probably the prospect of F3 is very annoying. So it gives something for black, that's for sure. Yusupov would have something there, so why give that? It's just a gift for your opponent. But I don't know, just something along these lines. This is just, the point is you have a lot of activity. You have a better knight than theirs. You have more space. You just have a good position. Modify Internet Explorer. File. Okay. No, let's block that. All right. So F5. Something like this. Yeah. So I think we're gonna have to play F4 here. And there's no tricks, right? There's no tricks here because you have enough guard, so they can't do knight takes. Okay, they have to retreat their queen. Yeah, okay. The computer might say it's about equal, but I still think you have better activity. The only problem is the rook is actually kind of misplaced. Because we have to go. Maybe we don't have to go rook h4. We need to gain the tempo to play f4 though. Okay, we'd have to solve the problem with our rook. It's not, again, it's not cut and dry here. It's not like we're just straight away winning in this position. But we definitely have, the point is we have a clear plan. And I think that's the key moment where you can do knight d6. And it's the same plan that I think you may have been going for. And you had multiple, there were kind of multiple stages of the game, a few moves apart where you could have kind of pursued that. Starting all the way back here, right? The second they play c5. But it's okay, you still had time to do it. But that was back on move 10, and where are we now? Now we're on move 17 or 18. So you've had multiple moves to do it, right? To get that knight into d6. But then it comes back to g3, and now we're going backward, right? So it's just something that if you're going to do a move, of course you're not comfortable doing that, right? You wouldn't be very comfortable doing that. So if you can, the second you start feeling a little uncomfortable, like, okay, wait a second, how can I avoid doing it? I'm not sure what the time control was. I think it was like 15 minutes or something. So you didn't have all the time in the world, right? You kind of had to make a snap judgment. But still, if you're making a move that just doesn't feel right, like knight g3, like I really would rather not do this move, then try to come up with. You should always have some some move you can weigh against that move, right? The move that makes you a little uncomfortable versus like a standard move. So, well, the standard move is actually just a very aggressive move, knight d6, or even rook c1, anything. And you have to prove to yourself that this move is better than rook c1. That's the standard. Now, knight d6 is the bold move, right? Because that's the one that's not going back. That one's advancing. So it's kind of, there's no going back there. So that or the other one, I'd weigh it out. But I would start with this move. And if you can already prove that rook c1 is better than knight g3, then you got to go with rook c1. You can, or at least you're not doing knight g3, right? Because you don't want to do it. You have better options. So you start looking at some lines, and you're like, okay, your intuition should just be screaming, saying, no, don't retreat. I mean, there's a time for that, but not now. Because again, it's all about weighing out their real threats. Do they have any now? No, they don't. So you got to go for it. You got to go for the attack. That's what chess is, right? You got to be bold. You got to try to make it work. And again, like I said, this does have a kind of defensive purpose too. I mean, hey, if nothing else, if you really just don't like knight f5, and if the reason you're going knight g3 is to stop knight f5, well, you've already accomplished that by going here. So you say, well, if you don't challenge it, I'm just going to sit there very proudly on d6. If you do challenge it, well, then maybe I'll take it and I'll ruin your structure. Actually, I'd be very happy with this position because you create this fluidity, see? See, in this position, well, they could have been blockading your pawn. So they go from blockading your pawn, they were for a second, right? Yeah, they did it here. But rather than doing that, you're sort of like making them afraid of me. Now they're going to start worrying, right? They're like, oh, I got to get rid of that knight. Well, probably, maybe knight c8. Let's take a look at that. But let's say they do this. You trade it off. Okay, now not only is the pawn, there's no knight there, but now the pawn's free to advance. So I don't know. I like moving the queen and getting the rook out first. But this is coming at one point. Maybe you could do it now. I mean, it might be a little premature, but because the rooks are starting to get out. But I don't know. It's interesting. Because you just have your space advantage does not go away. But yeah, I kind of like either rook c1 or queen d2 here. Let's see what would happen if they go, for example, like rook c8. Pretty sensible, right? So they're like, okay, at least in this line, they traded off your knight. They could take control of the c file. That is slightly annoying. The Stockfish is liking your game a lot here. I think really it's about your center. You've been playing with this space advantage in the center all game, and so one thing led to the next. The fact that you had the superior knight freaked them out. They wanted to trade it off. It ruined their structure. I mean, they do have the c file for now, but nothing that can't be challenged, right? So, yeah, not ideal, but somehow I think you're gonna want to roll those pawns at the right moment. I mean, I suppose you could do rook ac1. I don't think that would be a bad move. I think that's fine too. Just challenge it, and at the right moment, you'll toss in g3, get a loot for your king. Don't, because when rook's on open files, right? No need to worry about back rank stuff, and then try to find a way to start advancing. All right, so you have a clear plan there. But ideally, I'd almost rather just keep my knight there. But what if they did knight c8? Because they really want to get rid of it. Now again, knight g5, you can just go. I think rook c1 is pretty good. You can take the a file whenever you want, and yeah, I'd say they can get their counter play on f5. You still have some advantages you're working with, and they might have to create some kingside weaknesses just to do anything. It's looking at, I think it was saying 8 or A4. That's interesting. I like the A4. I like getting to A5 and starting to create, so you already have a rook there. So you can create play on the A file. Maybe your queen moves up and you get the other rook on the C file. That's another way to go. So because since you can't invade on C7, you might want to create play on the A file. So here's how I think of it. If I don't know what to do, well, of course, like I said, you're looking for open lines, you're looking for weak squares, but it's like how you're seeking activity. You're trying to maximize the activity of your pieces. That's, if nothing else, that's kind of like if you were to program yourself essentially, and you're to say, how can I program myself? Like if you were a computer, what would you program yourself to do? You're trying to maximize activity, so like that should be your default, right? So if this is going to maximize the activity for my rook, I like it, right? It's an aggressive mindset, right? But you have to be, again, you have to be, if you want to really get these guys. Now, sometimes, sure, there's players who win just purely being defensive and wait for their opponents to make mistakes and stuff. But okay, generally speaking, they're not going to have the initiative. They're going to get squeezed a lot of times. Sure, they might get lucky. Their opponent might make mistakes, and they might just thrive in that kind of position. But still, generally speaking, if you have the chance to maximize your pieces to increase your activity, such as this knight, that's a prime example, by maximizing the activity of your knight by placing it on d6, you should do it, right? Because it looks like you were trying to do it, but the problem was it was on the wrong square. See, because then you're like, okay, oh, I see, because you were going for rook e4, right? But again, from knight d6. Wait, did we look at 1 second? Did we look at knight c8 though? I wanted to look at that real quick. It was kind of interesting. If they just try to challenge this. Yeah, we didn't look at that one yet. Now it's suggesting just retreating back to e4, but then we're kind of repeating ourselves. I mean, I guess if you really don't, because I do like that knight. So just like I said, the bishop is like kind of questionable to trade the bishop. So let's say he comes back, you're like, all right, fine, I see you want to trade. Okay, I'll do something else first. And then if you really, or maybe, yeah, rook c1. Oh yeah, sure. Because then you're threatening to go to c7. And then if they go rook c8, cool, now you're coming in with the tempo. And they don't even, oh no, they take d4. Hold on, no, I can't do it yet. Takes. Let's see. If we take on c8, no, we can't take it yet. That's interesting. It's suggesting rook c3. Again, I'm just looking at the options, but still thinking of other ones. But yeah, I don't really like trading knights, because if you just take the knight, I mean, I think black is fine. Black is doing great, right? Because again, you have a little space advantage, but it's kind of moot now. Not really doing much with it. And the queen's active, putting pressure here. They're actually trying to go here, or possibly even maybe this one comes out and opens up this line. I mean, they already have the c file though. And the problem is that now you can't challenge it without dropping this. When they take, you're going to drop the d pawn. That matters, right? That's an important pawn. And the queen just is all in your position there. You don't want that. Yeah, so maybe black, but again, the point is that black is the one now, not white. Black is the one that they have to be defensive. So you're trying to make your opponent be defensive, not you, right? So after f6. Okay, they come back. I mean, hey, you can take the draw if you really wanted to, but okay, let's look at this. What can we do here? So you have to do that. It's saying rook c3. I don't know. I can't come up with anything better. The problem is that you can't go queen d. You don't want to go queen d2 because I think they're going to take, and you can't take back with the rook since the knight hangs. So you'd have to take with the queen, and then they gain a tempo on your queen, and now black can gain the file again. So that doesn't. It's probably not something that the player with the white pieces would want to do there. But still, we're looking at it from both sides. Just interesting to know the prospects for your opponent as well, because that's what you want to prevent in the game, right? And use for yourself in similar circumstances. So this, where are we now? Let's go back. But yeah, we might have to go back if they go knight c8, and then we could kind of find the right timing. But at least we would test them out and see if they do that, right? But knight g3, it's not. Yeah, it's just not putting pressure on them yet. Okay, sure. You get your rook e4 in. But again, the problem is that even swinging it, we saw it probably doesn't do too much. He goes here. Okay, you go here. And now this is, so I said this team's active, but the key is that you have a coordinated plan. How do the rooks and knight fit into that plan? And as I was saying, at least in the other line, if we have a knight on d6, we maybe like double on we have a rook on the e file and the c, or maybe doubling on the c, and then the queen can support those activities or those pieces. But here, yeah, she's attacking some pawns. I get that. I get that. But you'll see, once they deal with it, and this is actually, it helps them just, they can play d6, and then they just have to deal with the a pawn, which I don't think they did right. Okay, we can critique a few things they did here, right? So rook at e1, just to get to the truth of what should be the best move you can use in the next game. So doubling, and now so this is where you ended up. So what happened is you ended up committing to the e file, and there's just not really anything to do on the e file. Now I'm not trying to be harsh or anything. I'm just saying, right? It's just the reality. There's nothing to do on the e file, and it can't really do anything there at this point on the king side, not yet. That's one of the reasons is f4 f5. That would stir up some activity, right? So and the thing is, I made these arrows, or I had them here showing the arrow here. So really what you want to do is you want to take the c file, but you never got that. And the queen now is saying, okay, now I'm keeping an eye on it, so you're not going to get it you're not going to get it later either, right? So he wants that c file for himself at some point. So d6, striking back. I don't know, it says accurate. I thought it was fine. Opening up the d file, it was pretty sensible. Now this, okay, I think this is where you could have gone. The next move might be somewhere else. You might have gone wrong positionally. So h3, which is fine, that you're creating a loop for the king. But now when he takes, and you take back with the rook, see now the advantage swings up a little more for them, right? -1, so black has a 1 pawn advantage. Why is that? Well, part of it is that they have attackable weaknesses. So say be careful about giving your opponent attackable weaknesses. That's very important, right? Now, are they attackable? Well, d4 is sitting on the half-open file. It's typical isolated d-pawn, the Isolani scenario. It's just something that Yusupov has to work with, right? I don't know if it's the name, same name as the famous Yusupov, right? So it's just a prospect. Now, where are your targets? Well, you had d7, that's gone. And now I'm going to get to this a7. Well, they could play a5, and then the knight guards that. Everything's good, and then they're free to move their rook, and they've got the c file, and suddenly Yusupov takes over the game, right? Black is doing extremely well then, and White's initiative just kind of fades away. So yeah, so by taking with the pawn, you keep the wedge pawn, and you don't give them that target, right? Sure, they get the d file, but you at least you don't give them the target. The other thing is you have lateral movement, right? It gives you some lateral swing ideas. So for instance, you could challenge the c file. Now, if they go for a5, you could just challenge this. You can go, it's even saying rook d4, but at some point, you can always toss in rook c4 and be able to challenge this. Although it looks like right away it looks like this is strong for them, right? Because now they're the one who's going to sink their knight on your third rank, right? Because you missed a chance now they're going to do it. And you can see actually that's why I thought that this was pretty sensible. Their d6, get off the queen's attacking path. And just increasing activity and maximizing activity. The queen's already doing pretty well. The knight's doing well, right? Knight's well posted, looking on, just kind of aiming in your territory, ready to hop around, and guarding c7 importantly. And then it's also guarding b6. So when a5 is played, got this. So black is doing really, really well, right? So again, it's based on those things I said. You got to take advantage of those things. Otherwise, they can start taking over, right? Okay, so h3 takes, so we want to take with the pawn to not give them attackable weaknesses. Now, I thought that it didn't make sense to me. I said, not making a ton of sense since that rook was already attacking the d pawn. a5 can free up the a8 rook to occupy the c file, and black has a clear plan of action, right? So, yeah, just go a5. I mean, and then a5, everything's cool, and then everything's guarded. You come here, life is good, right? But when this it's a little illogical to me because it's like you already have a good rook. I get it. Now they were overreacting to you. They have to react to it, but then they're fine. Say, okay, fine. I have to play a5, then I'm good. And by the way, that anchors in the knight sometimes, right? So a5 is really very sensible. That was a much better move. This is not terrible, but okay. You never solve the problem. Yeah, your rook looks at the c file, and eventually is able to get into break in through the c file, but this rook is just babysitting the a pawn. So just play a5. Just get it over with, right? Just like how you played when we talked about playing g3 and just stopping the knight in some line, right? Similar idea. Or even playing f4 to stop the queen. Just do it, right? You have to make those moves sometimes. Just make the defensive move and then you're good. But the thing about a5 is it's actually an attacking move too. Okay. So a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of stuff here. King H2, Queen F4. It's a really great game, I think. King G1. Now they opted for A6. It's okay. Okay, they're going for this instead. They want, and you can just see it still turns out pretty good for them. It's probably not their best. Or they could have gone. They could have invaded with the rook. That looks pretty annoying. But they're kind of waiting it out, just to like increasing the pressure. Okay, queen comes in, but as we can see again, like so essentially the queen is doing, it's like a one-piece attack, right? They don't really have many weaknesses. F7, but you can't attack it, and yet it's so annoying. This knight is so annoying here because it's stopping rook e3, so you can't swing over, and you can't go to F5, and you can't go anywhere right now. You can go to H5, but you can't really orchestrate an attack on H7. They can always play H6 or whatever, or G6 and kick it out. So it's very hard for white to do anything now, and you can see it's kind of aimless at this point for the queen. So and that's all because of the lack of plan, and that, like you knew, and you identified that. Clement identified that, so that's great. And now so that's why I really wanted to focus on, okay, here is how you can avoid that, right? Get into a position where you're going to feel a lot better, you're going to have a lot more prospects, be able to press your opponent, tie all the ideas together, find the attackable weaknesses, coordinate your forces around that while simultaneously stopping your opponent from doing anything to you. And that's kind of, the rest of the game is not really that relevant because that's the core part, right? That's the part I really want you to take something away from, okay? So rook c7. Oh wow, I didn't look at that. You could have won right here. Amazing, amazing. So this 2,000 player, you can see 2,000 players don't always play so great, right? They're giving you this move. You see it? Maybe don't look at this. Don't look at the right if you didn't see it yet. Just think about what can white do. It's like a little puzzle here. You can pause it if you want. White to play. Boom. That's over. Queen takes d5. That's nice because you got the back. It's like one of those puzzles on, Puzzle Rush or something. Queen takes d5 and you get back rank mate. That's it. They would just win the piece. So hey, actually, okay, I take it back. Your move was great because it's great if they mess up and play this move. But if they don't mess up, what's a recommendation, for example? I don't know. They can do the same thing. The queen goes to the opposite square. But the difference is that their pieces are starting to come in. Again, I still think that they should have done a5. Okay, I'm being a little picky here. And they should also have a loof for their king if they want to lift their rook. So they should do that soon. Yeah, they could have done better, but at least they have prospects for 3 pieces. Right now, you only have prospects for kind of just the queen. Maybe these guys start to come in though. It's not over. You always have possibilities, but less so now, I'd say. All right. So the queen goes back. It's a blunder because you missed a win. It's a missed win. That's annoying. Too bad. Okay, next time you got to catch that. Even so, that's a lesson actually. Even though you think you're worse, like you feel like you're not doing too well, it feels like you have a worse position. Always keep your eyes peeled, right? There's always opportunities. They will make mistakes at some point. Okay, queen goes back. Yeah, you rarely play an opponent who plays like an impeccable game. Okay, hats off to them if they do it. But every other game there's going to be mistakes or at least inaccuracies. And that's the thing though. So if you're playing a 2,000, 2,200, say, look, think of it like this. I know they're going to make a mistake. If it were a 2,600 or 2,400, I know that player would crush them. It is possible to crush them. I just need to focus on my game, play the best game. The opportunities will be there, okay? B5, Queen A5, Rook C2. And I say, yeah, kind of like I already pretty much said that. I said this is an example of black having clear activity for his pieces and clear targets. It's very, very easy to go astray in a position like this where you lose sight of a clear plan while your opponent has it all figured out and continues to step up the pressure, right? Like black they're good, right? Black knows exactly what they have to do. The rook's on the second rank. They have pressure on F2. The knight's great. It's good defensively as well, as we talked about rook E3. And okay, they can probably just drop the A pawn and just to get everything in, or take this one and double up on the 7th or something. It's bad. Or second rank. It's not good. So yeah, again, the key is to not find ourselves in a position like that if we're on the defending side. Again, some people love to defend, but I wouldn't recommend having this position with the white pieces, right? But to the untrained eye, it's like, oh, but look, your rooks are doubled up and stuff. But what are they doing? Do they have an attackable weakness? That's an important theme of this game. This is only if you played F4 and F5 and cracked it open, but that's not going to happen here, right? It's kind of far away from here. So again, because you didn't do that earlier, you were better. You were better at some point. It was like fluctuating a lot. You had chances to be better. They made some mistakes. They even once they were better, they still blundered. But now that's probably it. That's probably your last chance to take this game. Okay, takes, and then it's just, as I said, that explains the blunder. I think it wasn't like you just blundered out of the blue. You know, you were under a lot of pressure, and they were doing better. They had a better position here. They're starting to invade. 3, 4, 5. They picked up the E pawn now. As I said, that could be a target, and one of the reasons why you might still actually want F4 in some cases in those positions. And then the queen, and then you made the mistake and it took. Okay. But yeah, I wouldn't beat myself up over that. It's more, don't beat yourself up over any of it, just learn from it. But the point is that the part to be learned is from earlier. Okay, you made a blunder, big deal, try to avoid it, be careful about this. But it's hard, it's -3 all, yeah, now it's saying it's -2, now it's saying -3.5 or something. It's fluctuating, but it's clearly not good for white here. We can just rack up the advantages, right? Really posted knight. They won that pawn. They got the queen deep in our territory. The rook is kind of just defending. The only thing I don't like is, again, that they have to babysit these pawns, because it is kind of annoying to have to commit, and they haven't made a loop for their king. I don't know. So yeah, like A4, you still have counterattacking prospects here that they should bypass and just hold it there. But yeah, I mean, he definitely didn't play it that accurately. And even here, it's like, okay, definitely it's better for black, but the problem with his position is like, it's really hard to get his rook in the game, because he doesn't want to just gamble and take this right away. I mean, he might actually, but no, he can't, because if he goes here, he's trying to checkmate you, and then he gets checkmated. So, yeah. But I think really the points that I made, I think I kind of reiterated them a bit, and those are the most important things of this game, I think, about your kind of the mindset you have. Are you intimidated when you play a high-rated opponent? Because that may affect whether you're making certain trades, whether you're making a retreat like knight g3. So be very strategic about when, and again, irrespective of your opponent's rating, just it's about what makes sense in this position. You're trying to press, right? You play e5. You want to put pressure on your opponent. You see a weakness, put that pressure on them. Now again, bishop e4 is okay because you're trying to trade and then ensure your knight, but you already had another route, right? So that was one thing. And then let's just go over the key moments again. Now black made a big mistake. Yeah. Yusupov could have had the advantage for black here after queen b4. So he could have had you under some serious pressure. But now you're fine. And now again, but you could play. I would go for the f4 stuff. Know that you might. Okay, some players don't like to take too many risks, but it's also it's what's fitting in the position. For example, let's say you have a king's Indian in front of you. Let's say you had like pawn on e5 and you have to play f5. You know, it's just f5 is what you do in a king's Indian almost always. And if they take, sometimes it's just best to take back with your g-pawn. Okay, your king looks like it's open. Well, you cover that with your pieces. You make it work, right? It's all about working with what's in front of you, being objective about that position, pressing forward, maximizing your pieces, making the most of it, right? But even here, okay, but that's the main move. I think it's not like it's a blunder itself, but it's the idea behind it. Whatever your idea was, I don't know. I'd like to hear, but it's that you're not going for your advantage. You're kind of acquiescing in a sense. You're giving in to your opponent. So I think so, a little bit. Now you're going for this. It's more like a different plan, but you could have had the same thing with knight g6. And then it's just kind of like your pieces got kind of stuck, and you gave them the attackable weakness on d4. That's important. So in terms of you're talking about Clement, you're asking, okay, about what do I do with my middle game plan? Remember, a lot of that is going to be about, well, it's going to be a blend between pawn structure and piece activity. Now the pawn structure is going to enable that piece activity, and a lot of times the piece activity revolves around where the weaknesses are, assuming you care about the weakness, right? Like this, you probably want to just drop this pawn and let the rook, more so that also letting the rook invade, right? So that's gonna, and also the fact that the pawn's on e5 enables the knight to sit on d5, just as it would enable your knight to sit on d6. So at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to have maximum piece activity. Sometimes you can forget about the pawn and say, hey, I'm still going to get my maximum piece activity anyway. the pawns are traded off in the middle, or you can get around them. In that case, okay, well, the pawns are still gonna be relevant somehow, usually, almost always. As Philidor said, you see right there, right? Pawns are the soul of chess, and you'll see that come up again and again. It's kind of like your it's like, I think of it like terrain, right? If you're looking at topography, the pawns are your terrain, right? Those are your mountains and so your ranges and so forth, and that's going to tell you where you're going to be able to move strategically, right? If you're thinking of it as like a battle game. Yeah. So and the other thing is that pawns don't move as much. They often get locked up like a mountain range. Those are fixed. So you can kind of look at the map and figure out, okay, how do I need to work? But of course, if you can move some things, if you can move a mountain or get through the mountain, okay, maybe, or maybe you just get around the mountain, right? But I think of it like that. It's just very, very important. You know, everything revolves around that, as you can see. I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that covers all the points I wanted to get at. But again, what Black could have done? Black Yusupov here could have definitely done better. Again, like right here, the Rook C8 stuff. Now I just thought, just like, well, it wasn't like a terrible move, but similar to Knight G3, it was kind of just going in the wrong direction, right? Like right here, just play A5. Okay, what is White supposed to do? Okay, let's say similar to the game. Let's say you come back, Rook A8. I mean, it's just a great position. And then get your Luft, right? Play G6 or something. Make a Luft for the king. You have absolute control of the C file. It's just everything's where it needs to be. There's nothing to attack. Weakness here. This is guarded by the knight, and it guards A5. So you don't have to babysit the A7 or A6 pawn as it was in the game, right? So that's the improvement that some improvements that could have been made. So let me know if you have any questions. Let me see if it actually went. Make sure it actually went through. If there happened to be any questions, I missed them. He said, it's Vijay Sahar said, "Hi David. Hi, are you still there?